move away from the very scary low ceiling bits. So here's a bit about César Franck. He was born in Liège, which in 1822, and he lived until 1890. He was born in Liège, which was then part of the Netherlands, to a father from the German-Belgian border and a mother from Germany. So although we think of him as solidly French, you will understand in minutes that he wasn't by birth French at all. He, in contrast to Elgar's father being unable to send him to the conservatoire because of money, his father, as soon as he showed any musical talent, decided that he would be the next Liszt, and he would make them a fortune by being a prodigy composer and touring the world, and no pressure or anything. So as a boy, he was sent to the Royal Conservatory of Liège, studying solfège, piano and organ, as well as harmony. He gave his first concerts in 1834, aged just 12, before King Leopold, who was the first king of the newly formed Belgium. So obviously much earlier in his life than Elgar managed to, or even Erlen. His father then planned to send him to Paris to study at the Conservatoire there, but at the time they did not accept foreigners, and so his father went away and organised to become French, and therefore he was allowed to go in 1837. He went with his brother and won many prizes while at the Conservatoire. He had high hopes of winning the prestigious Prix de Rome, but in 1842, having not won it, he made a voluntary retirement, as they call it, from the Conservatoire. Nobody really knows why, but he just left, possibly due to his father being very disappointed about the Prix de Rome. He returned to Belgium, but failed to make any money out of music, and his father was enraged and disappointed with him, and brought him back to Paris to perform family concerts and do a huge amount of teaching. He was extremely unfulfilled and working extremely long hours. It was during this difficult time that Franck really started to develop his skills as a composer. He wrote a set of trios for violin, cello and piano, and started to be recognised as a promising composer. Liszt, his father's model for his son, saw these trios and offered encouragement and constructive criticism, even performing them later, some years later. Despite the trios being moderately successful, César Franck was still failing to make it as a composer. Relations with his father were awful. He was not allowed any social life, and when his father found a piece of music to whom he had dedicated, or which he had dedicated to his love for Félicité Desmousseaux, he ripped it up in front of his eyes and forbade him to marry, which at the age of 25 at the time was legal. That fathers, so he was 24 when this happened, and his father was legally able to stop him getting married. Upon his father ripping up his music, he walked out of the house, went to his girlfriend's house, rewrote it from memory, and left the family home, moving in with her and her family, who welcomed him with open arms. He made a clean break with his father and was determined to become a different person. He wrote, "As different as possible from my former self." He married Félicité in 1848, having turned 25, and they were married during the month of the Paris Revolt, and apparently all his wedding guests had to climb over the revolutionary barricades to get into the church. By which time his parents had thawed enough that they did come to the wedding ceremony and sign the register at his church. Franck became a recognised organist, not his passion, but a steady form of income. He gradually fell more and more in love with the organ, and eventually worked in the St. Clotilde Church, where he installed the newest type of manual organ. This technical advance provided the launch pad for Franck's composition skills, and by 1859 he had many pieces for organ, choir and harmonium recognised by other musicians and the general public as important works. He built his reputation as a performer and improviser on the organ, and played many inaugural concerts on new instruments in Paris. It was a time where many new instruments were being bought by churches, and he was the sort of key promoter of these new instruments. His works were also played a lot in Germany at the same time. The Franco-Prussian War, which was 1870-71, caused many of Franck's pupils and supporters to disappear, either killed in the fighting or having fled Paris. The Conservatoire closed for a year, and economic hardships were encountered by everyone, Franck included. Following the end of the war, the new attitude towards French music that we recognise so easily now that became a very French and extremely nationalistic style was developed. The newly founded Société Nationale de Musique had Franck as their oldest and first member, with his music appearing in the first programme in November 1871. Franck had reached the position of foremost French composer, and then embarrassingly they realised he wasn't French at all. And so when his father made the family French, it only lasted until the boys were 21, and nobody knew this until they tried to make him a French figure of importance, at which point somebody pointed out that he didn't have the right paperwork. So of course he got the right paperwork, as he seems to just did in those days, right, which had just become French now, and became the professor of organ studies at the Paris Conservatoire following the retirement of the person who had that role before. Franck became known as Père Franck, Father Franck, and was recognised as the grand old man of French composition at the time. In 1886, Franck composed the violin sonata that we're going to play for you as a wedding present for Belgian violinist Eugène Issei, another stellar figure along with Menuhin and Kreisler. It was a resounding success. Issei played it in Brussels, Paris, Berlin, and took it on tour with him everywhere, often playing it with his brother Theo on the piano. The violin sonata became Franck's most popular work, and in France at least, the most generally accepted work in the whole repertoire of chamber music. Franck was awarded the post of Chevalier of the French Legion d'Honneur in 1885, which is a very great honour for any musician to have bestowed upon them. Franck continued to write works of music that were popular and well respected. He enjoyed his teaching at the Conservatoire, although he was quite contentious because he didn't like to follow rules, and was popular with his peers and his students. He fell ill in October 1890 and died in November of that year. His funeral mass was held at St. Clotilde, where he had been organist for so long. Among the congregation were Delibes, Sanson, Fauré, Vidor and Lalo, but not Liszt. Franck's violin sonata remains a seminal piece within the chamber repertoire. Tonight's programme has had lots of big, beautiful tunes in it, and we can intend to continue in the way that we started. This sonata has been described by one of Franck's contemporaries as the first and purest model of the cyclical use of themes in sonata form. You need to go to music college to understand what that means. He presents three melodies upon which he builds the whole sonata, using them in various different ways. The first movement flows straight out of the first of these melodies, and it develops two different themes with bursts of energy intermingled with calm periods. The third movement, the Fantasia, has echoes of unaccompanied Bach, which it shares in common with the piece I played just before the interval. And the finale is a magnificent piece of canonic writing. I basically spend the entire movement chasing Tony, and occasionally he chases me as well. It is simple and majestic and huge proportions, so I hope you really enjoy it.